Hi, everybody. This is Peter Chotti, and I wanted to introduce you to Rachel Joy Victor, who works very deeply into the AI space. And Rachel, thanks for joining.
And thank you for having me here.
And just wanted to do a quick intro to the session today when we're talking about AI and how it's going to be impacting video production and Madison Avenue in Hollywood. So there's a big upcoming event that is a must-attend event on May 16th. So Rachel, tell us more about it.
Yeah, May 16th is going to be AI on the Lot, which Fabric AI, which I'm the co-founder of, is one of the co-sponsors and collaborators on. It's really to get up to date on what is the latest that's happening with AI tools as it intersects with content production, especially in the studio system. So we're going to cover everything from the AI strategy piece. How can you legally within your company start implementing AI tools, to AI in writing, AI in virtual production, simulation tools. And in addition to these kind of larger sessions, we also have these breakouts to go really deep into technical pieces around, independent film and how it can utilize AI tools, workflows around like Comfy UI to start making your own diffusion models, and tagging of content, how AI helps facilitate your editing flow.
Going to be there, right?
Yes, we're going to be there together. I'm really excited about it. Another big part of it that we're really excited is in the lead up to this event, we really want to start showing how these flows around AI are being used to create new categories of content. So we're sponsoring this competition called Cinema Synthetica. It's going to be done in the lead up to AI on the Lot. We have 3 teams of 3 filmmakers each that are working off of one script that's written by Emmy Award-winning director and screenwriter Bernie Su. And they're going to use AI tools to kind of have a micro budget and build off of that. And at AI on the Lot, we'll be premiering a little behind the scenes documentary of their different workflows and how they are playing around with the tools that are available today.
Look, it sounds like a great event. I went last year and I really urge everybody to go. It's a great event. And leading up to the great AI summit from Digital Hollywood, that's going to be in July. But Rachel, thank you so much for joining. I can't wait to see that film competition and see what these people come up with based on the same script. I think that's really cool.
I think it's going to be great. I think there's so many great tools out there, and it'll be a great way for people to dig into what's really available and what they can start implementing today.
Really good to see you again, Rachel. Thanks.
Same. Thank you, Peter.
I'll see you there. Welcome. So today, as I said in the introduction, we're going to be talking about video and AI. And I have a great panel, a great roundtable here today with Toby Campion of Lore Machine, who's CEO and founder. And I've followed Toby from the very beginning. I've written a lot about Lore Machine. I think very highly of the company and of Toby and his thoughtfulness about it all. Comes from Vice Media, among other places. So very much with the creative bent behind him. And then we have Zach Ryder also. Zach, thanks for joining, of Modern Arts, which is a studio agency. I'll let Zach describe it a little bit more, but spent many years as an executive creative at Anonymous Content, which is a great company. And then Ben Palmer of the New Computer Corporation. And Ben, pretty fascinating as I read a little bit more, that you're a product studio focused on content discovery, ad tech, and teleportation, which really which really intrigued me. But the reason why you're all together is we're going to Toby's going to give a demo of Lore Machine. And both Zach and Ben are familiar with Lore Machine, have used it, and they'll describe kind of how they use it, how they see it. And then it's going to open up a bigger discussion of what all of this represents and how AI is transforming media and entertainment, but also advertising and marketing. And obviously this comes on the heels of OpenAI introducing Sora to the world, and to a certain extent of shock and awe about a month ago when they did. And then other companies that I've written about, including on the music side, Suno, which is text to music, which is pretty fascinating too. So that's how we're going to kick things off. And Toby, I'll give it to you first, just a quick introduction of your background.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah, my name is Toby Campion, and I'm a media executive, writer, and digital artist. I'm the former head of digital at Vice Media and the founder of the tech and science channel Motherboard. I am currently the CEO and founder of Lore Machine, which is an AI system that transforms story text like novels, song lyrics, resumes, short stories, really any textual news, any textual modality into multimedia experiences. And so, yeah, we're on a mission to untrap our civilization's text and turn it into all different types of immersive formats.
And Zach?
So I'm Zach Ryder. Thanks for having me, Peter. This is super cool. I was most recently at Anonymous Con for the last 6 years, started a division there called The Lab, which is really meant to kind of help brands kind of step out into this new world where advertising is starting to look a lot more like entertainment. Earlier in the fall, spun out of Anonymous Content with my partners and started Modern Arts, which is kind of a doubling down on that original idea. Our focus is really on trying to give consumers things they want. So trying to dig into subcultures that people care about and helping brands build things for those audiences that add value to their lives. So whether in this case it's a comic book manga project or documentaries we've released on Prime Video, things that really kind of sit outside of the world of advertising, but ultimately like are meant to kind of have a marketing effect.
Appreciate it, Zach. And then Ben?
Hi. Yeah, so I've been working on the web since the 90s, and I had a creative agency for a long time called Barbarian Group, and we did a lot of software, websites, marketing, did some pretty famous stuff back in the day. And now I have a product studio called the New Computer Corporation. We're building a lot of decentralized technology to power more interesting web experiences, just sort of taking advantage of all the economics outside of cryptocurrency of the blockchain. So we've built a lot of technology around that, and we're building a teleporter, which I could show you later this summer, and it's the most fun that you'll have on the internet. It's incredible, and we'll interact with a lot of other experiences, including Lore Machine. So I'm very excited to be here. And Zach, I was good friends with Steve Golin, so
The best.
big fan. Yeah, he was the best. Yeah.
Thanks again, Ben, for that too. And so all of you should be coming to the AI Summit for Digital Hollywood in the summertime, because you can then showcase some of what you're all doing too, because it sounds fascinating.
Yeah,
so very good. So Toby, why don't you dig right into it and give us a demo of Lore Machine and what it is, just so people out there understand it, and then we can get a sense of how Zach and Ben think about it and how they use it.
Crack open a LaCroix here.
Perfect.
So, yeah, I absolutely will. I think one little crucial piece here specifically to contextualize Lore Machine for this conversation, as it maps to Hollywood and entertainment and premium content production is, you know, I had spent most of my career at Vice, where we would wake up in the morning with an idea, and by the end of the day, you know, we could have a documentary done, we could have a project done. The speed with which we moved in that, like, admittedly sort of feral organization was so fast. And I think that none of us had ever been exposed to like traditional media production workflows or whatever. So we sort of just made it all up, and everyone was super coordinated. And it was just like quantum speed. And after I left Vice, I took a year to just write, because I was kind of done with like bureaucratic inertia a little bit, and was just like wanted to have my imagination connected with reality as quickly as possible. And out of that, though, one of my stories that I was working on was optioned for a film here in LA, and I was up in Canada at the time, so I came back to LA. And what I hadn't really clocked during my whole time at Vice was just how slow the production process actually is in Hollywood, for both scripted and unscripted content. And as a deeply impatient guy, I was like, I can't sit here and wait for something to come to fruition over the course of 3 years. Like, it's going to drive me crazy. So like the impetus for Lore Machine was, how do you start chipping away at technological solutions for expediting the process of getting stories from text into multimedia experiences. And so that really is like the philosophy that, that carries through everything that we do. So I'll share my screen here. Can you see this now? Okay, cool. So yeah, Lore Machine is a web application anyone can use. And I'll take you through it. So it's just gonna start on the homepage here, and hit login. And there's all these modals that pop up throughout the site that explain what's going on, because it's a relatively new type of experience. But we're constantly shipping features, every day. So there's like new stuff going on. So here's the create page. So this is a decidedly barren page in which you can fill it with all of your IP, your ideas, your writing. To experiment with the system, you can grab a story from a public domain library that we maintain. If you must, you can head to GPT, but for the most part, Lore Machine is BYOL, which is bring your own. The whole system is governed by tokens. So in order to use the system, once you're through your first free 100 tokens, you do need to buy a package. So there are 4 tiers. There's Easy Start, In-Depth, Pro Mode, and Enterprise, all of which that come with different costs, and each one gives you a certain number of tokens per month, which govern both your textual synthesis, so the synthesizing and analyzing of your text, and then your multimedia generation, so the images, the audio, and the video that you create.
Can I step back just for 1 second, really
Please.
quickly? So somebody who's coming to Lore Machine, they want to take their IP of whatever it is, so their textual content, and then visualize it. That's what Lore Machine does. And visualization comes through like storyboarding sort of thing. Like just give it a high level and then continue on.
Yes. So Lore Machine is based on like user input, which is always text. It can be different modalities, like a news article, like a screenplay, like a book, like song lyrics, whatever it is. We currently are visualizing resumes and turning them into comics. So it's like any textual modality, and then out the other side comes any multimedia modality, aka images, audio, and video. And I'll show you how that works.
Thank you.
For sure. So once you're ready to go, you just enter in a story. So this is just a chintzy like 900-word story from GPT. I guess the author isn't technically me, but just for the sake of the demo, I'll take you through it, and I'll fast forward. This is a screen recording, so just fast forward. So yeah, there's like 10 scenes. This is like a cyberpunk story, like Neo Tokyo, like street justice type story. So once you've entered your story, you pick your art style. So right now there are actually, as of today, there are 14 stable styles that we've trained to render text into visual experiences. So these are like deeply thought through styles that are ready for story scale. And what I mean by that is that for a lot of the AI systems out there, you can kind of prompt it to do any style whatsoever. But because those styles aren't fine-tuned, they aren't very good at rendering lots of different frames with consistent characters, with consistent styles. So we actually keep people on Rails with a specific library of styles. There are 14 as of today, and there will be over 150 by the end of April. So
Toby, let me ask you a question about that. Where do those
styles?
How do those styles get generated? Where are those styles from?
We build them either in partnership with artists or with rights managed assets. So they are all ethically sourced, like original files.
Ethically sourced AI.
And that's an important point. Ethically sourced AI, and that's I like that. That's a nice label, by the way. I think that's a good label. But that's an issue, just to flag it, that we'll talk a little bit more about at the end of the session. But go ahead.
Yeah. So for this one, I believe we rendered it in 1987. So 1987 is a style that's trained on rights managed screen captures from movies from the year 1987. So you'll see it in the outputs. So once you're ready to go, you just push visualize. And so what's happening here is that we're synthesizing your text and identifying characters, locations, doing a sentiment analysis, grabbing a bunch of different metadata from your story, and then we build up your characters. So the first step is, okay, here are your characters from your story. So it's identified these 4 characters, and these are essentially like establishing shots. So we take everything that we can possibly glean from your story and render characters that in the style of 1987 that resemble the characters from your story. Where we don't have details, we then infer. So one of the things that we got very quickly was that people wanted to customize their characters. So you can actually use this radio button system to customize all the different aspects of your character and then regenerate. So this is just a regeneration in a different style here. And
Let me stop you there again, sorry, but
yeah.
So like Yoshiko in this case, Yoshiko was a character in the text that was input. That was the name of this character, and so it automatically Lore Machine takes that and then brings this to the fore. That's how those characters were generated.
That's right. It's not working off of any other data. It's kind of like, it's right now we're in this really interesting paradigm where people think about AI as like one prompt in, one output out. And so it's like, I'll take a 160 prompt and I'll put it in the system, and then out the other side, I'll get an image or a 15-second video or a piece of audio. And the crucial distinction, when you go through that prompt process, the system that you're working with, whatever it is, whether it's Midjourney or whether it's DALL-E or whether it's Pseudo or whatever, or GPT, the output is only as good as the input, which means that it's only got what you've given it to work on. And so for us, the crucial distinction here is that instead of 160 characters in and one output out, we can take up to 30,000 characters in, and then out the other side can come a gallery of multimedia. So it's really, we work at story scale, not at like single output scale. It's the best way to describe it.
About that, everybody who's watching this, 30,000 characters, 30,000.
30,000 words, actually.
I mean, 30,000 words, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's a full script. That's a full script.
Yeah, the average screenplay is 28,000 words. So that was the goal, was just to get to there. But by the end of April, we'll be at 550,000 words, which is the Bible. And that has nothing to do with the orientation of our company. From a religious standpoint, we just thought, hey, how cool would it be if you could drop the whole Bible in? So then you just render your locations next. So same process. So you identify all the locations in the foundational text, and out the other side come renderings of all your different scenes in the style of 1987. So it's really we're in the Discord all day long listening to people, and more often than not, what we get is like, holy shit, like, this is cake that came out the other side looking exactly like how I had it in my imagination. And we can't figure out whether people's imaginations are spotty or whether our system is really good, but whatever's happening, there's this like AI magic moment where you see the thing that had just been in your head, and in your text up until now. And so to see it come alive is really exciting. I think that our biggest hope here is not to say, okay, cool, that's the alleyway, that's what's going to be in the movie now, but like this is like the starting point for exploring and prompting your own brain to come up with ideas. And the analogy that I often used was when I was a kid, I would often because I was a terrible drawer, I would close my eyes and I would do a scribble, and then I would open my eyes again and I would see an image in the scribble, and that's what my drawing would become. And our greatest hope right now with Lore Machine is not so much just replace all the functions of Hollywood, but to help writers and to help set designers and to help all the people that work inside of the system jog their minds to come up with even better ideas. So this is just how it works with locations. So you can see these, like, they've all come alive. I particularly like the bathhouse thing, although I think I'd put a little bit more of a perimeter around the pool. So Here's the scene selection stage. So, the reason why we have this step is because if you did indeed drop the Bible into the system, you'd have thousands and thousands of scenes. And if you rendered all of them immediately, you would destroy your token count. So the idea here is that for the token conscious, you can select specific scenes and not have to render all of them. So you're like, oh, I really want to get this this specific training in the forest scene. So you can go deep on that one. So because there's only 9 of these, we're just going to render all of them. Actually, no, there's actually a lot more if you zoom down. But yeah, this just allows you to pick the scene. So you got your thumbnail as a location, you got a scene summary and a scene title for each scene. So once you render scenes, what's happening here is that we're taking your characters, your locations, and your style, and we're merging them on a scene by scene basis. So what comes out the other side at first blush looks like a storyboard, because that's how we understand a sequence of images all arranged in narrative order. And so you've got, all of these scenes where your character is getting dropped into the different locations in the style of 1987. Pretty cool. So, this is where people, I think that the more traditional Hollywood types look at this and they're like, oh yeah, it's a storyboarding tool. And we're like, no. This is just the beginning. So what you can do with the system is take any one of these assets and jump into the editor and reprompt it. So you can change clothing, you can change location, you can change style, you can change angle. And as of Thursday, you can convert each one of these assets into animation. So that's going to be our foray into video. I neglected to include a shot of the editor experience, but Lore Machine's open to everyone right now, so you can go and jump in and check it out yourself.
Okay, so Toby, just for
yeah.
the sake of time, a little bit, I want to just ask a couple of questions, and if
Yeah.
you could,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything more you want to show on this, but
there is. Let me finish. Let me just. I'll just finish this up just so you can see. This is really crucial. So what you get is like essentially all of your assets high resed in a local folder on your computer. So those are all ready for distribution. And then we have an expanding set of form factors for export. So this is image and text. So this just drops the images into the text where they appear in your story. So this is good for Substack users, Wattpad users, screenwriters who want to see their screenplay come alive, et cetera, et cetera. And then this is a preview of our animation tool. So it stitches all your videos together into one thing.
Side, what happens at this point?
All right. Okay. Now I'm done, Peter. Thank you.
No, that's very cool. Can you then stop the screen share just so we can see? Okay, perfect. So Toby, on the audio side, what happens once you had that visual output stitched together? Is there any audio that comes that you can incorporate into it right now?
There is. I'm actually sitting in a garden in Santa Barbara right now with a bunch of coffee house goers, so I had to turn the volume down. But we're working on 3 audio solutions. One is that you can pick between a number of different like audioscapes that have been generated based on a sentiment analysis of your foundational text. You can also choose sound effects based upon objects that are identified in the backgrounds of images. So you get to pick between different sound effects, and then VO for voice.
And then from start to finish, from the time that you input, let's say what you just did, to the output, was the demo relatively in step with what it would take if you're pretty sure about your characters? Like if you just go bam, 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 does it take that long to render, or does it take much longer?
End to end, if you're not going to customize anything, you're just going to drop your text in and just hit the buttons as fast as you can make it through in about 3.5 minutes.
Amazing. And then, like you said, it's animation now, but that means it's how long until it's full video where you're essentially being able to create a full-fledged story that's seamless video.
Yeah, that's ready to go. We just haven't pushed it to production. And it'll take a second. I think that, like, Hollywood, I think everyone's going to photorealistic video right now. For us, because Hollywood isn't the final stop. We're taking our time to decide when we want to release that specific feature. There's like a lot of different products coming out right now that are focused just on that. And for us, we see a much bigger picture than just Hollywood. This is an ability to be able to empower our writers of all walks of life around the world. So we're not, we don't want to be mistaken for just a AI video editor. And as a result, we just haven't shipped it yet. Yeah.
And you can imagine out there, I mentioned Madison Avenue before, but you can imagine for marketing for agencies out there and just what that all can mean. So with that, thanks, Toby. That's really helpful and fascinating.
Yeah,
Zach,
sure.
why don't I want to ask both you and Ben how you're using Lore Machine today and how you anticipate it will change or you will utilize it for the businesses that you're doing.
Well, I'll jump in quick. So our whole kind of philosophy with Modern Arts is if we want to move to a world where you need to be giving audiences things that aren't ads, if you want them to actually pay attention, you ought to be tapping into the minds of the people who make the stuff that audiences already love. And so rather than have a kind of a traditional creative department, we have a whole collective of screenwriters, showrunners, producers from the highest levels of entertainment that we build stuff with brands. And so in this case, when Omen, which is HP's big gaming hardware division, came to us, they said, hey, we need to be more relevant to young gamers, particularly in China. Started doing our own sort of research and realized manga is obviously massive around the world, but particularly in that sort of subculture has really kind of hit a new level. And we started doing a little bit more research and digging for more insights, and we kind of stumbled into Love, Death, and Robots and realized, especially at the time, a few months back, it was really like the series that every kind of young gamer was sort of talking about. And it just so happened that one of the guys that were close to us, Phil Gillott, the writer of Love, Death, and Robots. So we sort of said, all right, well, we have the ambition to make a manga with a brand, and we have this writer of Love, Death, and Robots who's beloved by this community. How do you bring those two things together at scale really quickly? And for a long time, we'd been sort of tracking Toby and working with him on other projects and kind of knew all of what Lore Machine was going to add up to. And so it became a question of how could we all kind of get together and figure out a way to bring an idea that would be in kind of from Phil's imagination to life. And so essentially we wrote a script with Phil in the form of a Word document that would ultimately become a 32-page digital manga. And then sort of in chunks would deliver that to Toby and the Lore Machine team, and then sort of feed it into the system. And then quickly sort of get back images that would kind of lay out in the form of the manga that we were trying to create. And then we would be sort of connecting with the clients, in this case they were in China, about the progress, right? And letting them sort of weigh in and make changes. And I think that's like a huge element to why Lore Machine is really, really beneficial for us, particularly working with like these giant brands, is you're able to iterate really quickly. And so, in the inevitable process of getting 12 stakeholders' opinions on something that is 400 images, right, really, which is what this thing ends up being, maybe more, you have to be able to output fast. And so at every step of the way, whether it was like originally kind of rendering what the characters are going to look like, what the world's going to look like, to then kind of bringing it all together in the form of the manga, we were able to show them things with crazy speed to get their buy-in to keep moving. So end to end, from the time Phil sort of puts pen to paper to the time we deliver a 32-page digital manga, it's like 6 weeks, which is crazy when you think about the amount of inputs that you have to get on the brand side in order to get that thing moving through the system. I mean, we could have built it even faster if it weren't for kind of the human element, right? Like our team kind of weighing in and feeding back, and obviously Toby and his team, and then the clients. And so now that we've put the first volume of that out into the world, we have a second volume that we created that was literally inspired by a fan's idea. A young gamer in China like had a thought, like, well, it would be really cool if the story did this in the next volume, and we're going to surprise him and let him and sort of show him that we actually took this paragraph that he wrote, gave it to Phil, and together imagined a new chapter in the story. And we'll continue to kind of build on the success of that. So there's future volumes planned and lots of other things that are happening around it that all, again, just kind of take advantage of Lore Machine and the infrastructure that Toby's built.
Pretty amazing. Just like I was thinking as you were saying that, first of all, that's very cool. So the efficiencies, the speed, the ability to get quick feedback and output in that way, so just help you to generate, which can ultimately potentially get you more clients because you're able to do that, right? But also, like you mentioned, this individual who he was brought into his story idea, and you can imagine giving the elements that Phil created and making that available to the fans out there who can create their own stories based on that using a tool like Lore Machine, and that could all be monetizable potentially too by a Phil or you or whoever.
Yeah, I mean, Toby's going to kind of show you some of what it looks like, but ultimately that's what I think this is all going to add up to, is the ability for fans to co-create alongside the writer of their favorite show. And so as we're getting, ideas from fans in real time, allowing them to build their own sort of elements that become maybe featured weapons or tools in future volumes, you can see what a fun thing this is for the community, right? And again, like, yes, the speed at which we can move is important on the client side in terms of approvals and stuff, but it's even more important when you think about meeting the appetite of the community for this stuff. So you want to be constantly dropping new volumes of it, right? And kind of showing them that the ideas they're putting forward, like the enthusiasm they have for the project, is made real. And the speed at which culture moves, right? You have to be able to kind of do that in weeks, not months. And just knowing how traditionally something like this would have been built, you would have been looking at 6, 8, 10, 12 months in order to get something like this out into the world.
Yeah, fascinating. And Ben, how about you? Can you give us your background on how you're using Lore Machine and how you think of it?
Okay, so I've been an early user and tester of Lore Machine. I've been on the journey with Toby, almost since the beginning. Big picture, the thing I'm most excited about Lore Machine is that it's a tool for the real world, for real creative enterprises. And on the high end, it's like production ready. Like you can go back and edit prompts, which you need in a real world workflow or client driven workflow. Gets you out of the Discord UI and puts you in a professional interface. It's built for groups, so if you're working on this with a team, which you are if you're doing anything big, and so all that like takes it out of the kind of experimental, why am I interacting with this magical tool inside of like a gamer chat app, into something that's more usable and editable, and you can see yourself delivering something real out into the world or using in a larger sort of project, so that's like major. And then the other side of it is just like this is pointed towards the thing that I'm the most thrilled about Gen AI, which is it's a tool to create things that you might not be able to create otherwise, and so if it's tuned for writers who, for whatever reason, don't, they can't draw, they don't have access to an art department, they're trying something new, or they're just like writing at home by themselves and like uploading a new draft of their piece and using Lore Machine to kind of visualize what it would look like and get that off of the written page and into something more visual, and so I think it's just it's a very mature expression of where the field is right now. And then professionally, like I'm building this like shared internet teleportation experience, and I'm looking forward to when we integrate Lore Machine into that, because we're building a thing that's like, let's do the internet together, and so I think plugging in some real world collaboration and in front of an audience with this tool is going to be very exciting. And also I think it's just like going to get us to the next level of what the information stream is like, and as these things get closer to real time, what happens when you plug that into like things that are happening in the world in an interesting way. So yeah, lots afoot,
No,
lots ahead.
I think that's an interesting point. So it's almost like democratizing content creation, like high quality content creation. It's like I've done a lot of writing. I've checked out Suno on the music side, which is text to music, which can create this beautifully produced track, which it's wild. If people haven't tried it out there, you should check it out. SUNO. So there are a lot of people who get melodies in their head, but they have no idea what to do with it. And now there's an opportunity to create something, and that's all cool. So that's very helpful to hear how you all use it and understanding how you see the positives. I want to bring the kind of the flip side of, there's a lot of angst in the industry, and you guys are, you've all been in the industry for a long, long time. And so, there's the understandable concerns about all these efficiencies, and because things are done virtually, a lot of production jobs will go away, below the line jobs, but also above the line jobs, occasionally or ultimately with synthetic performers, things like that. I don't want to get too deep on that, but just in terms of how for those who are in the audience listening to this, and they hear about generative AI all the time, and there's a lot of angst in the industry. How do you feel about it? And I'm going to ask Zach and Ben, I would like to hear your thoughts about it, because I guess Zach first, you were at Anonymous Content for a number of years. You work with creative, throughout your career. You have an agency right now. Like what do you tell your friends and colleagues who are out there concerned about what it means to the world, the creative economy and the creative community?
It's interesting, like most of the writers that I know and the folks I know who kind of make a living making things, they think about Gen AI as it's a tool, right? Like so many other tools they use. And so someone like Phil Gillott, he was really easy to convince him to jump in on this project with us, because he wants to learn the tools, right? He wants to be close to people like Toby and get inside these projects to understand how it works. Because ultimately, as Phil looks toward his next project and projects 5 years down the line, he knows that in order to be able to do his best work, he probably ought to be thinking about how these tools can help him get there. I think, there are folks who just love the experience of being on sets, right? And traveling in groups and the culture of filmmaking, right? And I think that's going to be one of the things that I think is really impacted by this, is like, there's a sort of, there's an esprit de corps, right? When you're making something, like Ben said, something big, right? With a lot of people. And I think that's one of the things that I think a lot of folks struggle with just emotionally, is like, I get that on the other end of this, I'm going to make something awesome that I can share with people, and the experience from the audience perspective will probably be relatively similar. But like the emotional experience of making a big thing with all my friends is probably going to look a lot different. And so I don't think as many people struggle with it, at least in my friend group, professionally. I think they struggle with it more like, what does this mean for myself almost spiritually as a creative person, and it's how I've kind of come to define myself and all these adventures I have with my buddies. That's all probably going to change.
Do you think significant jobs will be lost and then new types of jobs created? How do you view that? Just
I mean, I think a lot about like drones, right? Like for the longest time, whenever we shot something that needed a big sweeping wide shot, they brought in this crusty guy who, you know, flew choppers, and like that was how you shot a lot of these big, beautiful wide shots. And then all of a sudden, these like punk kids who grew up snowboarding showed up with a backpack and a drone, and they could start to capture those same shots. And it was really jarring, I think, for a lot of people at first. And I think over time, a lot of people probably saw that there were benefits to filming with drones that you didn't have with helicopters. Safety is obviously one, but then the ability to just like get different kinds of shots and be able to kind of dream bigger and think differently about the kinds of things you could capture with a drone. Again, like it's a different kind of tool. So I think a lot about those kinds of analogies, other things in the filming world that have sort of been, you know, changed or evolved, and that there were certain types of filmmakers who were more interested in kind of learning those new tools and applying them to their craft than others. And I think those folks are going to probably be more successful.
Yeah, I think that the drone example is a really interesting one. It's kind of like also old style animation, which was hand drawn, and then you had computer generation, which changed the world of animation. And no question, jobs were lost, but new jobs were created. Ben, how do you think about it? How do you think about the opportunity and the threat to the way that things have been for the creative community?
Well, on the drone thing, was it? I forget what it's called. It's like Ambulance or something, the Michael Bay movie that came out. Yeah. So I watched that, and like he can do whatever he wants. He's a director that used to be able to afford the helicopters before the drones were there. And he's like, what if I did the drones inside and followed people around? You know what I mean? And like, so
Exactly.
he's using it as a creative expression that it just wouldn't have been possible before the drones, you know? And I think that that's like, you know, some jobs will be lost. Like, you know, when Photoshop was invented, the people painting the background sets like didn't have as much work. Like, you know, time moves on. I'm definitely somebody that has been working in new technology and new media for my entire adult life, and I'm not I've like never worked in film or some industry that has like a big sort of traditional way of doing things. So I just come from the perspective that like I don't think there should be any angst about any of that stuff really. You should just like see it as an opportunity to try some new things or put very powerful creative tools in the hands of people that didn't have them before. And like think about all the creators that are like grown up and filming Dune because like their parents could afford like a Super 8 camera to give them when they were kids, you know what I mean? Or like a DV camera or something like that, you know? Or like when computers got small enough that I had a computer when I was a kid, and you know, look at us now, you know? So like I think it's just like, you know, some people that have had it good and don't and are resistant to change, you know, might have their feathers ruffled. But I think the greater good is that there's just like a lot of cool stuff that people that couldn't do cool stuff before are going to be able to do now, you know, and you know, over the next like decade, 2 decades, we're going to see a lot of creative talent come out of different corners of the world and different corners of culture and business and art that that wouldn't have existed otherwise. And I think we should be, you know, excited about that, you know.
I want to ask you one just to close things up, because it's something I write about a lot, and it's obviously something that's understandably a huge issue for the creative community and for artists out there. So you have OpenAI's Sora, which is the text to video, and ultimately OpenAI, Sam Altman, the CEO, they're courting Hollywood, and you know, now from what I understand, Sora can only spit out 1 minute, up to 1 minute segments of like cinematic quality video, but it's really spectacular. And then I mentioned Suno on the music side. And my understanding of both of them, because I've asked Suno and I haven't heard an answer, is that all the training, so what the output, what the machine is basing it on, is so like when you prompt something and then before it gets to the output, what the training data is on creative copyrighted works, because works are obviously they're copyrighted when they're made it without that are openly available across the internet. And so there's no consent, there's no license that that OpenAI has sought. It's now starting to do individual licensing deal, but just generally sucked into its vortex. There's copyrighted works that have not been licensed. Same with Suno on the music side, where all these, these compositions and the recordings, it's what its LLM,
Yeah.
large language model, is trained on is on all those copyrighted works. So Toby was talking about his approach, which is public domain materials and these participatory artists who ultimately will get a piece of the output, however it's monetized, the output is. But how do you guys feel about that? Do you feel, and I know you're not, at least I don't think you're lawyers. I'm a lawyer by trade on the intellectual property side. But do you feel like that is, for lack of a better word, theft if there's no there's no consent or no license that's given?
I think but as a private citizen, I kind of think that all art is derivative work, like everybody's inspired by everything around you, and like you can go to the museum or look at a magazine or watch TV and get inspired and create something derivative of you're seeing that, and in some ways there's, it's not that different than if the computer's doing that, and you're interacting with the computer. And if you're asking for something that is inspired by something that inspired you in the real world, is it the middleman of that, but then professionally, like, the law is the law, and copyright protection is very important. And it's one thing to be able to create all that stuff for fun and for inspiration and for like storyboarding things, and then you go shoot the real thing. But like, if you're going to go use that in a commercial any kind of money making sort of way, licensing is very important, and the provenance of that it becomes very important. And so if it's a professional tool, very different considerations need to be taken. If you're doing like production ready, if it's going out from the machine into the real world, that's a totally different situation.
And Zach, I'll end it with you, your thoughts about it, because you've worked with creatives, of course, throughout your career. And so I'll put it kind of this way. Do you believe artists should have, even if their work represents 1 out of 1 million, let's say it's in a training data set, do you think artists should have the ability to opt out if their consent is not given?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with Ben, right? Like, copyright is the law is the law of the land, and I feel like you have to respect that. I think about our project, right? Like the one we worked on with Lore Machine. Like, that's probably a better example. It's like to go back to the earlier comment about ethic. What do you call it, Ben? Ethically sourced AI.
Ethically sourced AI.
Yeah. Like, I do think, like, in the world,
I love that, by the way. I don't know if that's a term of art, but I love that.
I think, like, our project, as an example, right? Like, it's very much a human-led creative endeavor. Phil Jalot wrote the text that we brought to life using Lore Machine, and a bunch of artists were involved in creating that artwork through ethically sourced material. And honestly, like, the only way you're going to get big brands, I'm talking like Fortune 500 brands, to really grab onto these tools and start making big change when it comes to the kinds of marketing materials they make, is for it to be built the way something like this is built. We're years away from anything else happening, just given all the gray area around so much of this stuff. And so that, I guess that would be my thing, is like, we're showing that it's possible. And I think that's one of the reasons why HP was game, because we were able to very clearly kind of demonstrate provenance and show them, look, this is where it's all coming from, and this is why we can say we own this output. And I think if you're going to be making things with brands in a capacity like that, it's kind of the only way to do it at the moment.
That's great. On that point, I'm going to end it. I think that that's a great practical way to like that idea and that reality that brands, the big brands, the established company, they're not going to work if there's potential massive litigation, not only litigation, but also just the adverse impact on the creative community. There's not going to be adoption of that kind of a system, at least potentially. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So with that, Toby, thank you so much for the demo. Everybody, like I said, I've featured Lore Machine before. I think what Toby's doing is extremely thoughtful. He comes from the creative community, as I said, and I'm going to continue to follow what he's doing. You should check out Lore Machine for sure. Zach, really a pleasure to meet you. I think great thoughts about what you're doing, and everybody should check out Modern Arts in the studio that he's created. And then Ben, also, thanks for joining today. Really interesting perspective. Can't wait to see more about your teleportation. And
For sure.
all of you, fascinating discussion, and we'll have so much more in another time. But thanks again.
Great.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks so much, Peter.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.
July. Stay tuned for my third episode, the second half of May. And until then, keep up to date with all the key developments of how Gen AI is impacting the world of media and entertainment by subscribing to my The Brain newsletter on Substack at themediabrain.substack.com. Also, check out my weekly column in The Wrap, new every Tuesday morning. And finally, check out my AI and entertainment-focused business and legal firm, Creative Media, at creativemedia.biz. That's .biz. And see you next month for my next roundtable discussion, and in July at Digital Hollywood's big AI Summer Summit.